4 in 10 people believe in ghosts. Over a third of people believe intelligent life exists outside of Earth. 43% of people believe demons exist. There are unexplained phenomena happening daily around the globe, and we are here to talk about it. Your portal into UFOs, paranormal, cryptids, the supernatural, the mysterious, the unknown. I see you. This is Beyond the Radar, and this is your host, Humanoid Tom Conway.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond the Radar, your paranormal news program. And like always, we are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Also, UPRN's Facebook and YouTube page and Beyond the Radar's Facebook and YouTube page. We are also on Roku TV. We are also on Twitch, and now we are on TikTok. So anybody there, check us out. You'll see a live stream simulcast of the show, and we are moving up in the world. We are moving up in the world, everybody. So let's get into the show this week. We have a wonderful show. I have Jacob Floyd. He's going to come on and talk to us about Nightmare Press, and as all of you know, I'm an author as well, and the work that he's doing is fantastic. I've researched his website and briefly looked over some of his material, and it's just a perfect figure for this show. It's wonderful. We're going to have a great conversation. We're going to pick his brain personally and about the company and what he's doing and what he's trying to do and his goals, and we'll talk a little bit later and continue our Summer of Species with reptilians today. So it's going to be a great show, jam-packed. Hello to everybody out there. Please, we are streaming live, so you can go ahead and comment. YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, you name it. And if you are driving, which I know down south is drive time, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 103.3 or 105.3 on the Gulf Coast, you guys are driving right now, then go ahead and text 484-283-5328. We have a free text board. So let me start by getting into our guest. I'm going to read a little bit about him and then bring him on. So we have Jacob Floyd of Nightmare Press, where they have a dream, and that dream is a nightmare. I love that, Jacob. To be the future of dark fiction. Goal is simple: to release objectively exceptional dark fiction works that are not aimed at one particular group or subgenre, instead purely existing to horrify the world at large. Rock on. As experienced authors, they know what it's like to put your heart into a piece of literature only to find out it's rejected due to various reasons, and they have absolutely nothing to do with the work itself. Simply put, if you're good if you're good and you have put the work in, they'll at least take it into consideration. So we'll bring on right now Jacob. Jacob, very good. Thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I do have to mention that my associate who's helping me run Nightmare Press, Bobby Shupak, actually wrote the mission statement. So he's my webmaster because I'm terrible at web design and all that stuff.
Hey, it's all right, man. You got to have a tech guy. That's what the world is, anymore. So I appreciate you having the tech guy and all that kind of good stuff. But, so thank you again for joining us. We have wonderful listeners that are into all kinds of horror, UFO, paranormal, ghosts, conspiracy, scary stuff, man. So you're in the right place. You're going to be in front of a wide network. We have wonderful listeners who comment, who text, who are very into it. And of course, being on the air and the radio waves down south, New Orleans and southern Mississippi, an extravagant area for the paranormal and things like that.
Yeah, I know New Orleans is a big time paranormal location.
Yes. So, well, real quick, where are you located geographically?
I'm in Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay, excellent. So, Yeah, I know exactly where that is. All that kind of good stuff. It's wonderful.
The home of
So
Waverly Hills.
Waverly Hills. Okay,
Hmm.
definitely know that. Had to get my side. Yeah, StreamYard and TikTok don't like to work together very well, so I have to get my side TikTok up here and read off of it from my phone in case anybody comments there. But it's an interactive show. Please, everybody, call, text, write, comment, you name it. But let's get into this. Jacob, you're an author as well, right? Nightmare Press. There's also, and researching your site, there's Nightmare Press Network as well on YouTube. And you've put out some books, most notably, or most recently, Chainsaw Sisters, Night of the Possums. Let me just pick you as an author first. What made you go from, hey, I think I want to write a book, to I'm going to write a book?
I've always liked writing books, and I've always enjoyed reading. So I decided to start writing horror as opposed to some other stuff in about, I don't know, 2015 or so. And I wrote sort of an occult fiction horror novel called The Pleasure Hunt that was with another press, and
Mm-hmm.
it went out of print. And that one's out of print, so it's not really showing up on anything. And I wrote Night of the Possums because in 2006 or so, a friend and I were out walking and we saw a possum, and I made a comment, like, "What if this possum attacked us?" And we started, because he and we made up funny scenarios like that.
Yeah.
I kind of carried that idea around for about 10 years, close to 10 years before I started writing it.
Awesome. Well, that's awesome. I always want to ask like the origin story, because how many millions of people out there want to write a book, but there's only the few that actually go ahead and go for it. You know what I mean? So I always like to ask, what's that jumping off point? Well, now as an author for you, as an author, what made you want to create the Nightmare Press instead of just putting out your own literature?
Well, a lot of it I saw within the indie horror community, a lot of gatekeeping
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of just the political stuff. People just, wanting to help their friends and kind of having a collective opinion mindset. And if you didn't go along with it, they didn't really want to let people in. And I saw a lot of people suffer that. And I saw so many good books out there from other authors that just didn't get any notoriety because they
Mm-hmm.
weren't friends with all these people. And I kind of wanted to create a press for those type of people because they're putting out good books. And also, most of the indie horror community is really only set on one type of genre, or maybe really two, I guess. And I kind of wanted there to be more room for more supernatural and more dark fantasy and just more of the subgenres that we are now publishing. And we got that list on the submissions guidelines section of our nightmarepress.net. But yeah, so I started it in 2018. And it was my wife and I, and it had to go after we had to go on hiatus for a lot of personal reasons and other things. But I decided to revive it again in either late December or January. And I asked Bobby Shupeck, who is working with me now, if he wanted to help,
Mm-hmm.
because he kind of had a lot of the same experiences and opinions and outlook perspectives on how he feels the industry should be and how people should approach writing. And we shared a lot of the same ideas on that. So that's why I asked him.
Okay, great. So let's see. My next question is a follow up to that one. Can you expand a little more on how your belief is of there being an underrepresentation of horror authors?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've had this conversation with a few people. Horror is hard to define anyway. Like I like
That's
to
true.
call I like to mostly call it dark fiction, but like different people have their takes on it. There's some people who've told me they think that horror is a subgenre of crime fiction, and for the non-paranormal, non-supernatural style, I guess that does make sense. You think of something like Silence of the Lambs. Well,
Yes.
is that horror or is that crime? And and Stephen King, I think it was him who said that horror is really just fantasy. And of course, he's referring to the supernatural stuff because that's what he really built his name
Yeah.
on. And that's kind of like what they call dark fantasy. So it's hard to define that anyway. And horror is just kind of horror literature fell off the mainstream map years and years ago. And there's a big section of it in the indie horror community with the small presses and stuff. But they're starting to get more books on some shelves here and there in different areas. So we're hoping we can add to that and maybe help. But I kind of feel like maybe horror isn't meant to be mainstream necessarily anyway.
That's funny you say that. I completely agree. It isn't a mainstream. I mean, look at also in the media side too, right? What was it The Exorcist was the last horror film that won an Academy Award. You know what I mean? There is I don't know, a certain stereotype with the horror, you know what I mean, in terms of media and my background and things like that. But it's you know, it's interesting to hear. It's interesting to hear um the dark fiction theory, you know what I mean, and then the horror theory as a part of crime, because you know, uh, to me, a good horror would be something in the supernatural realm. And that's just my personal opinion, because you do have the slasher kind, and you can obviously make the argument about, yeah, that's obviously a crime. It's a human who's going around lopping people's heads off, things like that, right? But I personally am more intrigued by the supernatural side, and if they want to call that fantasy, I guess you can, but it's almost like, I would think horror would be its own subject right there, and that's just my 2 cents on that one there. So getting back to Nightmare Press, let me ask you this: what would be, what would you be, or for Nightmare Press, what would you consider to be a sign of success for it?
Well, at present time, I feel like we're gaining a lot of momentum right
Oh,
now.
good.
And when I brought it back up earlier this year, well, since then we've gained, I want to say, 3,000 followers since January, which is not huge and enormous, but for the resources we have and being as small as we are, I mean, it's pretty decent. And the interactions on the page and analytics keep going up. And the real sign that we had noticed, that we'd gotten noticed, was when I put out the submission call in January. Previously our submission calls in the past years had only maybe at the most 30 or so. But like with this year, we got, if I remember correctly, it was like 150 something. And for having been dormant for 3 or 4 years and not just even doing anything, I feel like we came back strong with, gaining attention. But now we're trying to put out the books and see how we can, translate that momentum into some success.
Excellent. So when I have when I researched your site, I saw a bunch of different books on there. Some were from you, some were from others, and some I believe were short story too. Correct?
Yeah, we have some short story collections.
Okay.
Correct.
Uh, can you give me a success story of any of those books?
Well, I know that the Vampire series of extreme horror by Todd Sullivan, when it first came out, it was getting a lot of notoriety, and he was getting a lot of good reviews for it, on the indie level for people who aren't in that more popular section. And I think he did really well. The anthologies, retro horror, did pretty well. Now, the animal horror one called Animal Uprising, we made that one because the book I published, Night of the Possums, was pretty popular, and we decided to do more animal horror off that. And that Night of the Possums, it did so well, we basically didn't even have to factor Animal Uprising into our budget. I could pay for it with the success of Night of the Possums, and then we did Animal Uprising, and it went beyond paying for itself. So, trying to translate that, trying to get that into like reviews and stuff. You don't see as many reviews for it, but the sales were good, and the sales in person were good. So, I mean, we had some pretty decent success with that.
Very interesting. So let me ask you this about dark fantasy or dark fiction or horror. In your opinion, would they make more sense in a short story format or long form?
Well, I think you can do either one. It just depends on how where the skills of the authors lie. I mean,
Okay.
when I think of like short stories, I think of like a great short story collection that's out there, mainstream, is like Clive Barker's Books of Blood series. Like he tells an excellent story in almost each one of those. To me, a good short story is telling an entire story and not just part of one. Like a lot of people and I'm bad at this, I don't write short stories very well. And
Okay.
you end up creating a world that needs to be expanded. And it's really your short story ends up being just part of a bigger story that still needs to be told. But like I feel like the good short story writer just tells that entire story in that lesser amount of time. And horror works really well with that when you think of like the TV series anthologies in the past that did really well. But at the same time, horror, I prefer novels and myself because I feel like you can really get into the fear and what's going on and the backstories of everybody that's involved and why what's happening is happening, how it affects them, and why it affects them that way. And I think Stephen King, he's really good about doing that. I think that connects with readers, and that's why part of his popularity.
That's true. I mean, my favorite Stephen King story was a short story, I believe, and it was The Langoliers. And that was in a short story book, or rather short for him at least. But it was my favorite, and they made a movie about it, and it was like 3 hours long, and it's like a TV made for TV type movie.
Yeah.
And it was off the chain, or off the rails, I should say, not off the chain. That's certainly not. But it was definitely interesting to see their adaptation of that. All right, so Jacob, let's talk about setbacks. Have you faced any setbacks in your venture to create this, or in your author journey, or anything like that? And how did you overcome them?
Well, I think my biggest setback probably happened without going into too much personal stuff.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Probably happened in like I would say early 2019. Um, and there's just a lot of stuff in our life, mine and my wife's lives, that were just going on. Like there were stuff with things in her life, stuff with things in my life, and then of course things in our lives together. And with health issues with family and health issues with ourselves, and then of course the pandemic hit, and it made everything really difficult. And we had to shut down both presses, because I don't know if you know this, but we have Anubis Press too, which is paranormal nonfiction, because we're into that stuff too, aliens, ghosts, and cryptids.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and so we ended up having to shut those down, but after we got through everything, got all the roadblocks out of the way, and I decided to bring back Nightmare Press, and that kind of made her want to start doing more stuff. And overcoming the roadblocks really came down to finding other people who were interested in this kind of community that we're building around Nightmare Press within that horror community, and we managed to find several people to help us.
That's wonderful. And yeah, no, thank you for getting into that. Setbacks are a natural part of life, and it's how we respond to them, that really makes the journey, and I'm very happy and very, proud. And who am I? But I'm proud of you for actually sticking with it, bringing it back, and getting it back up and running, and all of that. I had no idea about Anubis Press, but one, great name. I'm totally into the Egyptian lore and things like that. But talk about Anubis Press. I know we've been talking about Nightmare. I had no idea about this. So that's paranormal nonfiction. And how many books do you have there? What are your goals with that?
That one was started because my wife and we started doing paranormal. My wife is is really more into the paranormal than I am. Even though
Okay.
I've had an interest in like ghost stories and urban legends and aliens and stuff like that. But she really wanted to start doing paranormal investigations, and she wanted to write books. So we started writing some books, and we tried to ship them around to certain mid-level presses, and we just didn't like their expectations in regards to what their compensation was.
I hear
And
you.
we had some small presses we were with, and we weren't too thrilled with that. So we were just like, you know what, we'll just do these ourselves. And we just decided to publish our own ghost books and alien books and all that. And we didn't intend to actually publish anybody else because we didn't really know in that, because it's harder to find the paranormal authors than it
True.
is like the dark fiction authors, right? And so, but we got a few people that we ended up publishing, and but yeah, we've got several books. We got the most recent one was Kentucky's Strange and Unusual Haunts, and that one was actually published in I think 2021 maybe. So we were kind of under, went under there for a while as well. But that and Aliens Over Kentucky, Haunts of Hollywood Stars and Starlets was a really good one for us. And we did some Be Our Ghost, which was about haunted places in Disney. And
Be Hard Ghost. I like that name.
yeah, and we did a couple of anthologies with some of the other ghost hunters we ended up meeting.
Mhm. No, so well, actually, who just commented, Nicole Gaspard, who is a loyal listener here. I've been on her podcast. I think you would be a great guest for her podcast as well. But she is a paranormal writer, and I believe, Nikki, what do you have? 18 books out now. I'm sure she'd be great for Anubis. But it looks like she has a question. I'm going to pop it up right here. Do you get ideas from dreams and nightmares? I know I do.
I don't think I've ever actually put any dreams and nightmares into my stories yet, but I do find like I have had inspiration from some of the nightmares I've had, and I have wanted to write a book that was a short story collection based
Mhm.
on the nightmares that have stuck with me that I had either in childhood or even had recently, even though none of them have really been that bad recently. But when I was a child, I had really bad nightmares,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah, and then I've always thought, well, I'd like to turn those into a short story collection.
That would be fun. I mean, it might seem unbelievable at first, but it's your actual true memory. It was your true life, all of
Yeah.
that. One more question from Nikki here. How do you overcome writer's block, or how have you in the past?
That's a good question because I've been actually somewhat battling with that over the last few years. It's not been complete writer's block.
Hmm.
More on the fiction end because it's not as difficult to write the paranormal nonfiction because you kind of just do your research and then you kind of write out what goes on there, and you can come back and edit that and change it around and make it sound good. But I've been struggling with that with fiction for the last few years, and I don't know if it's just some of the issues I got going on up here or what. And I got a lot of physical issues. I don't know if it's exhaustion from that, but I just kind of lost the spark for actually writing for a couple of years, and
Oh, wow.
I'm just slowly getting it back. And I did finish one book last year. I wrote one. It was kind of a really surrealist, strange book that I haven't published yet. I'm still debating on if I want to or not. But uh, I I have opened several new works in progress, and I'm having trouble sticking to one. But I think I'm kind of getting back in the mood for all the older ideas I had for the horror books. So you just got to kind of keep sticking to it. Write when you can, even if it's crap. You don't have to publish it, right? You're just getting it all out of
Yeah.
your mind and maybe getting those wheels going again. It's kind of like, I guess, putting oil on the gears or whatever, and just finally
Yeah.
maybe something will start rolling again.
That's funny you say that. As authors, have we ever been happy with our writing? Have we ever?
Yeah, right. No, we're not.
You look at it you're like, this is awful. Everyone's
Yeah.
lying to me.
Even after you edit it 17 times, you're like, this is still
Yeah.
crap.
Yeah. 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 That's not spelled right, even though it is. At
Yeah,
that
right.
point, you're like, all right, I just need to take a break and walk away from it. Um, Before we get back into it, and you can include your wife in on this, do you have any real life paranormal experiences? You or your
Yeah,
wife? Mhm.
yeah, she does. She had experiences at a house she used to live in a little town out here called Shepherdsville, where we used to do a history and haunts tour.
Oh,
And
okay.
we did one in Shepherdsville, and we did one in Louisville too. But she had just some experiences where there was this table that they had gotten, her family had gotten, and I think she said it was from an old gambling boat of some kind. But like the chairs would just like one chair would move out on its own at certain times of the night, and there would be footsteps throughout the coming down their hallway throughout the night.
Wow.
So the worst, I used to have a lot of strange things happen in my bedroom when I was a kid, but I don't know if it was, I could chalk it up to being a kid with imagination. But the worst thing I think I ever experienced is I had one of my real bad nightmares, and I was probably like 7. So I went and slept with my parents,
Mhm.
and I woke up in the middle of the night and just had this really bad feeling of dread. And I heard a sound in the hallway, like something being dragged, like heavy footsteps dragging something along the hallway. And I've just felt so much fear from that. And I don't know what it was. My mother and my sister had said they had heard it too and experienced it, but I don't know. There's also some history of mental illness in our family, so it's difficult to really say.
Yeah. It's especially also where you are. Yeah. Kentucky. You're in the Appalachians, right?
We're close to it.
Close
We're
to it.
Yeah, that's more eastern Kentucky,
Okay.
I think. But yeah, it's still. I mean, the culture still finds its way. Even though I tell a lot of people with Kentucky, there's two parts of Kentucky. There's Louisville, and then there's everything else. And I don't mean that in an insulting way. It just is. Louisville is a lot different than the rest of Kentucky. People's stereotypes of what they think about Kentucky really do not apply to the Louisville area so much.
Gotcha. No, I'm from a state like that too, Pennsylvania. You have Philadelphia, you have Kentucky in the middle, and then you have
Mhm.
Pittsburgh. So,
Yeah, right.
you
And I
know,
don't have any problem with like the Appalachia. I like
yeah,
that it's a beautiful countryside, and you meet a lot of nice people in Kentucky. I'm just saying it's more rural throughout the rest of Kentucky with the difference between a few areas. But like here in Louisville, it's got a real city feel to it, like more of a
yeah.
city.
So, but one of the things why I was bringing that up is with the Appalachian Mountains, right, and the range, and from the Northeast all the way down to pretty south. There's a lot of lore in those mountains. There's a lot of lore in those forests. A lot of people say they see a lot of different stuff, and it almost doesn't matter what point you are. There's going to be a story. If it was like only the Kentucky Appalachians, okay, then it's only there in Kentucky. Or if it's only in West Virginia, you know what I mean? But it's not. It's the entire length of that ridge, up and
Mhm.
down, that people have stories, and I just think it's fascinating. And with me, where there's smoke, there's fire. So if you have people
Yeah.
saying this stuff for generations, up and down, no matter where you're at, you know what I mean? That's a lot of people you're going to have to get together to lie on the same things. You know what I mean?
Well,
So
yeah,
I
that's
definitely think
true.
it's interesting.
That's the interesting part about studying the paranormal. But when it comes to the history of that area of Kentucky, we did sign a an author on Nightmare Press named Coyote Wallace, and
Hmm.
he's from Appalachia area of Kentucky, and he knows he has so much. I don't know that he's too much into the paranormal, but he has so much historical knowledge about that area um, that he's told me some stories that I can't remember because my memory is terrible. And it's really interesting, and the some of the ideas, some of the research topics he talked to me about would be interesting to pursue. But I know when reading or when researching for that Kentucky book, there was a lot of stories from the eastern side of Kentucky.
Excellent, and I appreciate the geography too, because it helps me pinpoint where people are. Most of the time, as a host, you just get a state, like I'm here. You know what I mean? And it's like
Right,
great,
yeah.
but
Yeah,
no, I
some people,
appreciate the
yeah,
geography.
the guy that helps me run Nightmare Press, he talks about Pennsylvania sometimes, and I'm just like, I don't in Pittsburgh, and I'm like, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, no, it's you're going to get the gambit, a little bit like your state, where you're going to have the city folk, and then the suburb folk, and then the county folk. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're going to have that, and it's a melting pot, and it's everybody. You know what I mean? It's old world. You're old world. I'm old world. We were here when the country was first started. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So let me go and check our text board here, because we got a few questions here for you, Jacob, from our loyal listeners and who texted in a question. This one's from Tammy in Florida. Do you have any projects in the works?
Well, Nightmare Press has a ton, but me personally, like I said, I do. I have like 6 works in progress open that I'm trying to stick to, but right now I'm trying to write one story based on a road here in my area that I've just been fascinated by because it just runs so long through different parts of the area, and but I'm getting a lot of different ghost stories and kind of patching pieces together, and the story's only loosely based on that road, but so I'm working on that, and it's kind of like about phantoms and sort of like a boogeyman type thing on the road in the area, and that neighborhood area is abandoned and everything. But as far as fiction, that's what I'm going. It's still in work, so I don't have a whole lot to say about it. But we do have some other paranormal projects we're working on right now, and we're excited about that, but we just have to get around to being able to do some more research.
Yep. Writing is rewriting, and also reading and research, and all of it is together.
And thinking and sitting around thinking.
And sitting around thinking and second guessing, third guessing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
Yep. Okay, so this one's from Roger in New Orleans. New Orleans. Thank you, Roger. 107.7 FM in New Orleans. How can one submit a book to you? That's a good question.
Well, if you're looking for Nightmare, if you're talking about the dark fiction, nightmarepress.net. That's where, and it's right there, says submissions. It tells you the guidelines, and there's actually at the bottom, it says to submit, click here. You click here and it'll send it to the email, but it's nightmarepress@yahoo.com too. So.
Okay, great.
Anubis Press is anubispress@yahoo.com, but we haven't been focusing on that one as much. But if you're looking for the fiction, that's where that's to go.
Okay. Excellent, and we'll reiterate all of that towards the end when we promote. And last question here, Brad in Tennessee. Whoa, I should have asked this one. This is a good question, Brad. Do you see dark fiction evolving?
I think it's already pretty big, because when I say dark fiction, I'm kind of encompassing not just horror, but like I said, dark fantasy, even certain types of science fiction. Regular fantasy can even be even like Lord of the Rings has some dark elements to it. And crime fiction, suspense, mystery, dark. There's certain types of dark romance and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think it's always evolving. I think it's kind of like sometimes it evolves and then sometimes it ebbs. I think it kind of like a puddle of water, I guess. It comes out and comes back in, and things change. And I think when they come in and things change, people start getting new ideas, and that kind of expands again, taking old tropes and doing fresh things with them. So I think it's gonna evolve, and I think at least on the indie scene, I'm hoping that Nightmare Press can play a big role in putting out different sorts of dark fiction than what you're seeing out there now.
Absolutely. I agree with what you just said there about, because all genres evolve, right? They're always evolving, and it's where is this one at now? Years ago, romance was in the twilight, which was paranormal romance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then comes like 50 Shades of Grey, and that's a completely different type but you can kind of make the argument they're under this also romance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not silly to think dark fiction, horror, whatever you want to call it, is going to evolve, because you're right about the ebbs and the flows, because some people at some point might want a more concise, concrete paranormal. It's a ghost, it's a UFO, it's a monster. And then other times they might want the more fantastical, you know what I mean, psychic versions and energy fields and things like that. You know what I mean? It all depends on where the market is and where people are interested in, and because it's all revolutionary, you know what I mean? It's all going to be. It's just where in this bubble are people's attention. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely right about that.
One example I can make is like, so the type of horror they call splatterpunk, which is like exceptionally gory horror, that got really popular in the last couple decades. And I think a lot of that comes off, horror is really set by movie trends. I think what's popular, and like you take a
That's
look at
fair.
what's popular in the 2000s is like Saw,
Yeah.
Hostel, that sort of thing, and that sort of bred the splatterpunk movement, which had already existed through guys like Jack Ketchum, Clive Barker, Richard Lehman, but like they kind of
Mhm.
evolved in that. But now, since they got this what they call elevated horror with like, what is it, A24, I think,
A24, yeah.
yeah, in the Bloomhouse and all that stuff. Like, I think you're starting to see more of a demand for that sort of horror with the more suspense and supernatural possibilities to it. And that's kind of what I've always been waiting to come back. And I think with The Conjuring coming back out over the years, the last, how long has it been? 10 years. I think
Yeah.
that started to breed a little more supernatural horror. So I think that's kind of a trend that's coming as well. So hopefully we get some new stuff there.
Absolutely. And yeah, no, you're right about that. And A24 to me has done a very good job of getting
Mhm.
into that and spreading it out, because yeah, if you ask somebody, what's your favorite horror movie, a lot of times they're going to come back to you and say, oh, I don't like gore. You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah,
like, that's
that's
just
that's
one
very
point.
niche. Yeah, that's kind of like that will probably never be mainstream, and it
No,
really shouldn't be mainstream, because if it did get mainstream, they'd just tame it down and take away the entire,
take
you
what
know,
makes it
what makes it
takes what makes it special. Yeah.
right, what makes it what it is. Now, supernatural can be put on the mainstream level. The only problem is when they do that, they just start doing the same thing over and over. Like, how many exorcism movies are they going to keep making? How
Yeah.
many haunted house movies are they going to keep making?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it's like there's going to become a point where if it wasn't, like based on a true story, it's going to be almost considered less than, in my opinion. You know what I mean? I could be
Yeah.
totally wrong, but the Amityville horrors, the Conjuring houses, the Annabelles, those type of things that come off of real or based off of loosely based off real stories, they're going to always do well. And for a little bit there, the found footage style was,
Yeah, that was really popular.
yeah,
Right.
the Paranormal Activity, which I thought the second one was actually better than the first one, but
I
like,
like the one. I don't remember which one it is because they made so many of them. But
yeah,
I like the one where the guy's walking around and he goes out to a shed out back of his house, and when he opens the door, there's just a bunch of, I guess they're supposed to be witches, but they're women dressed in just kind of regular black clothing that looks old fashioned. And
yeah.
that was just kind of spooky. But his reaction I thought was comical too, because he just kind of exclaims, and he just walks out. And I thought, well, that's probably what people would actually do. But
Yeah, yeah. It's a different way that you're trying to teach them acting for a horror. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Because your reaction might be different than my reaction. There's people that shut up, there's people that run, there's people that scream, there's people that cuss, there's people that try to fight. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's all unique. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So you might not get the best reaction because everybody's going to be somewhat different, or at least off in a different branch that way.
We mentioned A24 a minute ago, and you
Yeah.
asked me about my goals with Nightmare Press. I remember one of the guys that's helping us now that I recently, his help has been very valuable. His name is Darren Frey, and he's an author too. He's a very good writer. He has written some books called Psychonautic and In Dreams, but he was saying he would like to see Nightmare Press kind of be the literary equivalent of A24. And I'm like, well, that would be nice. That's a lofty goal. It's a lofty goal, but yeah, I would kind of like to be thought of as putting out that kind of horror, but also, different sorts of genres as well.
Even if you're close, that's still a huge, you know what I mean?
Right. Maybe on a small level, will probably never be as known as that, but never as popular as them. But
you would get your following, and you would get the following of people who want. I love the Nightmare Press novels. You know what I mean? And so you would get that following just like they do. And then that stamp becomes ever more important on a book in that genre. You know what I mean? So your authors, you're helping your authors are helping you. Even if it's to that degree, it's a huge success. Huge success.
Yeah, we've signed some very, very good authors when it comes to the sense of understanding how important author engagement is. And because that's part of the thing we address on the site is that us being the publisher, we're going to promote as much as we can, but we got to do that for several books. You as the author, you got your book to focus on. You don't have to focus on all the other books that we do. And it's important that authors be engaged, and that's for a small press. That's if you're with one of the big 5 publishers in New York, you're still going to have to do that. And I think we got a gentleman named James Watson who's doing the Vermin Sleep. He's got a book called The Vermin Sleep coming out, and he's been out there pushing it all over social media, getting it noticed. And that guy I mentioned earlier, Coyote Wallace, he's always trying to do stuff. And we just got a lot of people who are really out there pushing. And I think that's really important for people to do that, because it helps elevate not only themselves and the press, but just kind of the whole industry all around.
Yeah, you become vocal, and you try to become a vocal minority. You know what I mean? You try to get yourself out there and talk about. And hey, if Beyond the Radar, we're here. Send your authors our way. We love to talk about good horror on here, and we have people that actually tune in to listen to us. Wonderful Americans down south. So, yeah, there's actually people on the other end of this. There's not, just
dead air
pile. Yeah, not a dead end. Okay, so let me finish up with this question before I let you promote yourself and everything you're about. So as an author, what was your favorite piece of literature that you created?
Oh man, that's really difficult for me to say, because I think they all have some important meaning to me. Like I mentioned, how Night of the Possums had been on my mind for years. And I finally made that happen. But the one I wrote just recently, called Hearts in the Hourglass, it's surreal. It's really weird. It's got elements of a whole bunch of different genres, and it's kind of told with it's a broken narrative. Everything, it doesn't seem connected, but underneath things are connected. And I started out writing that as a joke, as to try to just like get my writing mind going. And I was kind of just like selecting different genres here and there, but it ended up becoming extremely personal. And I found myself putting a lot of catharsis into that book. And it deals with a lot of stuff that I've struggled with, even though I don't. It's all kind of lying underneath the story, but I know that. I'm not sure anybody else reading it would know, and that's kind of what's made me hesitant about releasing it, because people might read it and be like, "Oh my God, this doesn't make any sense. What the heck is going on here?" But at the same time, it's really special to me. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, if it's special to you, by all means, put it out there. But I know what you mean, because one of the most intimate things you can do in this world is let someone else read your writing. You know what I mean? It's very intimate. It's very,
especially when it's truly a glimpse into your mind and your life.
True. It's so true. All right. Well, Jacob, it's been wonderful. Please take the next couple minutes, promote yourself, promote Nightmare Press, your books, everything. You've been a wonderful guest, and I'd love to have you back on, but time is yours.
Okay. Well, for those interested in what we're doing, pay attention to the Facebook page. We're on Facebook. We're on X, Instagram, Threads, Slasher, and Blue Sky. And not on TikTok yet, but hopefully will be soon. But we got some really good authors coming out, but I also recommend checking out the authors we already have, especially for those of you who like aliens. There's an author there named Becky Pate. She wrote a book called The Untaken. It's a pretty thorough examination of alien activity. Like there's abduction, and there's this conspiracy is there. Then there's also a little bit of action later on in the book, and it's a very good glimpse into like how someone would feel, I think, being under all that. And if you like vampires, the Vampire series of extreme horror, Todd Sullivan wrote it, and it's not like any vampire story that I'm aware of. It's basically all vampires belong to a larger organization of vampires that monitor the vampires to make sure they don't hurt humans and do things to humans. But it involves rogue vampires, and it's more of an action, extreme horror kind of series. There's only 2 books right now, Butchers and The Gray Man of Smoke and Shadows, but they're really good. And we just got a lot of good stuff there, and we're doing more. We're going to start doing more with Anubis Press and doing our own paranormal. So you can watch my profile on Facebook where I talk a little bit about everything I'm doing, which is just Jacob Floyd author. It started out as just my author profile many years ago. Now it encompasses everything. And if you ever look me up on Facebook and you see a whole bunch of profiles, I've got like 6 different profiles out there. And there's reasons behind that, but I just decided to start using them all for business purposes. But and the Nightmare Press Network it's there, but we haven't really figured out what we're going to do with it yet. And we're also thinking about starting a Nightmare Press podcast and blog. But we also have a group called Nightmare Press Fans and Authors on Facebook. So that's where we're hoping to get that really moving again, where people can interact with the authors and with us too, running it, and maybe with each other readers. So we're really trying to hit the ground running and do a lot of things this year. We're off to a good start, but we got to really, generate it into something profitable to keep the press running, because we're not in it for money and fame and notoriety. We're in it because we want to provide a good community for authors who just want to be authors and write their books and enjoy that.
Wonderful. Follow Nikki's Para Talk Show. She's another great podcast host. Again, in the same way, to help you get out there as well. Please stay in touch with me, whether it's for yourself, your wife, Anubis, Nightmare, or any author you want to come on and promote. Especially in the UFO and paranormal realm, we would love to have them on and help out any way we could and get you in front of as many people as we can. We have so many loyal listeners here. This show is going over about 60,000. You know what I mean? So we'll be stay in touch, and we'll always give you a platform to jump off on. And like I said, it'll be on the podcast networks the day after on Spotify as well. So by all means, best of luck, and stay in touch, because you can always come back on or send one of your authors or anything you want. All right.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
All right. I appreciate it. Great talking to you, Jacob, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. That was Jacob Floyd from the Nightmare Press. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get into the species, the alien species this week, and it's going to be a good one. It's reptilians, and I have a little clip from an earlier episode that I'm going to play as well that talks about them. So here's an ad, and I will be back in just a few minutes.
4 in 10 people believe in ghosts. Over a third of people believe intelligent life exists outside of Earth. 43% of you believe demons exist. We invite you to Beyond the Radar, your paranormal news show. If it's unexplained phenomena happening daily around the globe, we're talking about it. exploring the unexplained, challenging the conventional, and diving deep into the shadows that lurk just beyond our perception. Come join the transmission on the United Public Radio Network. Once you come, you'll never be the same.
Read it today.
Do you want to reach millions with your product or service? Are you looking to connect with a diverse, intelligent, and engaged audience? Then look no further. Beyond the Radar radio show is your golden ticket to achieving just that. Our listeners are curious, open-minded, and always eager to learn. They value quality, authenticity, and innovation, just like your brand. With Beyond the Radar, your advertisement will be heard by millions of dedicated listeners. Our show covers a wide range of topics, attracting a diverse audience that could be your next loyal customers. So why wait? Take your brand to Beyond the Radar and into the hearts and minds of millions. Advertise with us. Let's explore the extraordinary together. Beyond the Radar radio show, where your brand meets a world of curious minds. Contact us today for advertising opportunities at www.beyondtheradarnews.com and fill out our contact form. We hope to talk to you soon.
Samantha survives a tragic accident thanks to Lucian, an enigmatic being. Her newfound abilities catch the attention of a secretive government agency. Drawn to Lucian despite the danger, Samantha is unaware of his true identity. She teams up with Lucian's brothers in a daring mission to rescue him. Accused unfairly, Lucian seeks refuge on his distant homeworld. Can Samantha prove Lucian's innocence and save their forbidden love? From the Sky by J.E. Nicasio. Available now. Get your copy on Amazon and BNN.
Have you ever looked up at the night sky and wondered what lies beyond? Have you ever felt a sense about mysterious lights darting across the sky? If so, my UFO 101 Unveiling the Unknown course is just for you. This course is a comprehensive introduction into the fascinating world of unidentified flying objects and extraterrestrial life. It is designed for beginners, so no prior knowledge is required. I am your instructor, Tom. I am an author, podcast host, and seasoned researcher in the field ready to debunk common myths and misconceptions. So are you ready to embark on an exciting journey to unravel the secrets of the universe? Join us at UFO 101 Unveiling the Unknown, and let's explore the unknown together. Don't let this free opportunity fly away. Enroll now and start your journey into the intriguing world of UFOs and extraterrestrial life. All right, welcome back, everybody, to Beyond the Radar, your paranormal news program. And yes, continuing our Summer of Species today, we are going to talk about a little bit of reptilians. Now, we're not going to get to the full spiel, I guess you can say, about the reptilians, but we're going to talk a little bit about it because there's so much to talk about in this. Many believe they are the Illuminati. If some have called them that, some have called them almost dinosaur-shaped humanoids. Some have said they claim they see them. Some say that they can hide and take human form. And I'm going to read a little bit, and I'm going to play a clip, actually. I'm going to play a clip first from Beyond the Radar's first episode when we had Joanne Fawcett on, whose husband is in the military, and talked. She talked about these reptilian creatures and almost said they looked kind of like velociraptors and things like that. But it's a very interesting story. So I'm going to play this clip, and we'll talk about it after.
Look like velociraptors. For years and years and years, they were not necessarily our friends because when they lived here, we were just rodents, and now they left the planet for millions of years and came back, and now we're running all over the place. but they decided to be our allies, and they work currently with our military when they're needed. But there was a certain point where their empress had to say, okay, stop eating the humans. We need to start working with them now. So they've tried to, curtail, unless you really piss them off, or you're their enemy. If they're helping the United States and our common enemy is maybe the Russians invading Ukraine, or who's ever invading Syria and all that, it's like, then they might eat you because you're the enemy of your friend that you're helping. So they don't eat you so much anymore unless they have to, or unless you've seen them and you're not supposed to, and because that's the easiest way to get rid of you. But there are other species that still probably eat us regularly, I would imagine, because we're tasty. But
I take pride in being tasty. No,
okay, good.
We have a question on our text
yay.
board. I got a text question.
Yay.
So first one, yes, thank you so much. This number. When you were talking about the Velociraptor, they wanted to know, do you think any of them are in the wild or left here not with a mission?
They have 4 to 5 bases, or they used to. I think they probably still have them again. They have 4 to 5 bases here on the planet. And so before COVID, there were thousands of them here. And sometimes the ones that don't live here, they'll come here for vacation because it's such a lovely planet. And lots of species like to come here for vacation, and it's easy to get here because it's kind of in the line of, there's a long L word, Lagrangian or something like that point. So there's a technical point, a term for why they like, this is kind of a good stopping off place if you're going somewhere else in the universe. But
so we're like a rest stop almost.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I would say that's what I think of it. So species do come here just to study scientific things. Species do come here for vacation. They don't really want to be seen. But so sometimes I am sure the velociraptors are here, but a lot of them are here as part of, they've been assigned to be here, is my opinion.
Okay. Very interesting and very insightful from what she had talked about, and they were, I appreciate her helping us understand that, how they look in their true form. But from everything that I've gathered in the first place, we have 2 different types. You have the draconian type of reptile, and then you have the reptile imposters of humanoids, which are from Rigel, I believe. And they have 2 different methods they want to infiltrate or hybridize. Draconian wants to infiltrate. The imposter wants to hybridize. I've known individuals who have said they've seen reptilians unmask themselves as humans, which would lend more to obviously the imposter versions of them. But it's very interesting, their characteristics, why they want to be here. Some believe they are part of our government. Some believe they are actually running our government. And, far too less of a time that we have right now than to get into all of those. But we're going to put a pin in it. We're going to talk about it later. We're going to give the reptilians their true time, let's say, and talk about it. But for us, that's all, everybody. We have been broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. We've also been airing live on Roku TV. You can catch our archive there or subscribe to Beyond the Radar's podcast on Spotify for past shows. Thank you all for tuning in, commenting, texting, watching, listening, and following. We truly appreciate it. I thank you all very much. And next week, don't forget, next week we have a special episode. We're going to have a wonderful special episode where Nerd Informer's coming back. Our intern, Emma Saylor, is going to be on as well. And we are going to be deep diving the movie Independence Day. It's going to be a fun time for everyone. We'll take questions from the audience. If you want to pop on, we'll let you pop on and give a question. But we're going to talk about the alien invasion from the movie Independence Day on Independence Day. How cool is that, everyone? So next week, please, I can't wait for you to be on. I can't wait for you to listen. Nikki, by all means, you can hop on as well. We'll give you a couple of minutes. We can talk about that. and it's going to be a wonderful time. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening, for talking, and until next week, stay safe, everybody. Have a great weekend.